Good evening. I'm calling to order the Concord Township Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. Hard to believe it's August already. Heather, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Lingenfelter.
Here.
Mr. Repper.
Here.
Mr. Schindler.
Here.
Mr. Eiffelise.
Here.
And Mr. Peterson.
Here. The first item on tonight's agenda before we really get into our normal routine is a public hearing for zoning text amendments as initiated by the Zoning Commission. And that would be an amendment to Section 31, Construction Maintenance Standards for Permanent Pool and Above Ground or In-Ground Pool. We're going to talk about those tonight, but I'm going to open the public hearing. So the hearing is open, but I see no public. So do we have nothing on the phone or anything like that?
There's no one on the phone and
okay.
no one in the room.
So, well, I guess we can close that portion of it. Yeah. And, so we'll close that and we'll go on to our regular agenda item, and we're going to talk about these items tonight anyway. So first of all, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes for our last meeting, which was July 11th. Do I have a motion to do that?
I have some corrections to be made.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right. You want to read those off?
Yes,
Myron?
if you look at page 17,
Page 17.
line 5 and 6, it's Mr. Eiffelise talking, and it says, I'm having, line 5 and 6, I'm having a difficult time grasping square footage.
It's probably square footage and just an extra word, you think?
Yeah, probably square should be eliminated, I think.
Scare.
You think so too? Scare? Yeah, eliminate,
scare.
yeah. Delete scare.
Okay.
That's right. So it should say grasping square footage
Yeah.
as a restriction on the garage.
Uh-huh.
And then second, on page 32, line 20. The Chairman Peterson.
Okay.
Can we delete the?
We can.
Because we don't have
The.
the any other place before your name.
Okay, so delete the word the.
The. And that is all.
That's all. Does anybody have anything else? Okay.
No, to be honest with you, I really rely on
Here or unfair, we do that.
to take that time.
I just take a quick.
Okay. Okay. Then, do I have a motion to approve the amended minutes from last month's meeting?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rich. Do I have a second?
I say, well, go ahead.
Second, Hiram?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Okay, good point. So we have 4 ayes and 1 abstention. The minutes from July are approved. Okay, correspondence. I'll start on my left with Frank. Any correspondence?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Hiram?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
No, nothing.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
All quiet, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
All
And
quiet
I-
on the way through.
And I had none myself, so no correspondence this month. Public participation, seeing none, we'll skip that section. And we're going to go into new business, and that is a vote to recommend approval of the text amendment, section 3104B, construction maintenance standards for permanent pool above ground or in ground. And you have in front of you the wording that Heather has provided for us. And that's in, as stated in section B, in red print. Is there any discussion of the changes that we proposed or that Heather has proposed? Rich, anything?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Andy, anything?
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you. Hiram?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Frank?
Nothing for me.
Okay. I had one item, and I discussed it with Heather, and I'll bounce it off the committee here. But when we get into line or paragraph 3, and we talk about removing your ladder on an above-ground pool when it's not in use. I once had an above-ground pool, and it was pretty common that, you know, when we went away, it had a swing-up ladder that went up and locked so that nobody could get in there. I think most of the above-ground pools have that feature. They may not, and some people may actually remove the ladder. But we talked about possibly adding wordage that would say either remove the ladder or swing it up and lock it. Or is that not necessary based on the wording that we have here? I'm okay with whatever the board determines. In other words, it says ladders are removed when the pool is not in use.
That, Mr. Chairman, that applies to when a fence enclosure is not required, right?
Right. So you have an above-ground pool, and you have a 4-foot high side,
And there's no fence.
and there's no fence because it's not required.
Yeah.
So this says you remove the
Remove the
ladder. And one of the options obviously is to raise and lock that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to call that out? Good.
Well, you know, I don't see any harm in not saying it. I mean, it would be a benefit, I think. Then there's just no misunderstanding.
Well, that was my thought, that a homeowner might have an above-ground pool or think about putting one in and read the rules and say, well, gee, I'm going to take that ladder out every time I go away. And,
Yeah.
I'm not using the pool, or just swing it up and lock it. So, other thoughts?
I know what you're talking about, and I think it's a very valid point.
Okay.
And we ought to amend it again to say remove or raise and lock.
Andy?
I'm kind of ambivalent about that. You know, I don't know. You know, I mean, how are you going to enforce that? That's my question. How's that an enforceable regulation?
Well,
In either case.
if something happens
Yeah.
and it wasn't stated in here, for example, you know, that could be something that the courts would say, wait a minute, you didn't make it mandatory, and then unfortunately somebody, like a child, drowned or something.
Yeah,
you know?
years ago, I lived in the northern part of the township up off of 84, and we had a neighbor that went on vacation in an above-ground pool, and they had a ladder. I don't know whether it was down or up, and the kids put it down, but some of the neighbor kids got in there and a young child drowned in the pool.
Yeah.
And they got a call on their vacation that this child had drowned in their pool. I think it was a 3-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah, terrible thing. They felt terrible about it, but you know, that comes into play if somebody's going to.
Well, it makes the owner, I think, somewhat responsible for one thing. If you're going to have something like this that's easy accessible, a
Right.
pool that's easy accessible for anybody to get into, I would want to, as an owner, make sure that's minimized for someone like a child to get up and crawl up in there. Because, you know, children, especially young ones, they're very inquisitive, and they crawl all over the place and want to do things. So
Right.
any way you can
And in that
minimize
case-
that from happening.
And I think in that case, the older kids unlocked it or unlatched it
I
and
might,
swung it down.
see, yeah, that's.
Like I said, I think we run into a situation where how's that enforceable? Somebody going to go around and look at pools, make sure somebody's home, and if nobody's in the pool, then that the ladder's up and locked.
Well,
Well, when
we're
the
gonna
pool-
And what if
enforce-
you're home and you know it's during the summertime and
Yeah.
you're telling me if nobody's in the pool or the pool's not being used, you have to have the ladder up and locked? Is
We
that
did-
what you're saying? Or you have to have the ladder out of the pool?
I think us as a township,
Yeah.
they have to apply for a permit to put one in, right? Above the ground pool?
Right, yes, a permit is required if you're gonna keep a pool up year-round for an above-ground.
So
Our
in
focus
our,
is, yeah, our concern, when we talk to residents about that pool, is making sure they maintain that 48-inch wall height all the way around the pool, and that somehow the access to the pools via the steps or ladder is limited. We don't necessarily get it totally into whether or not they remove the steps or if they swing up and lock. That's not been something that we
I
look
understand,
that
but
closely
we,
at.
as
Yeah.
we given them the permit,
Yeah.
we should make it a point, that's my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
that somehow that is pointed out. So at least we know, because you
Right.
go and inspect it once the pool is in, right?
Right, I'm only there once, right, when the
That's
pool is,
right.
yep.
And,
And
that's
unless
your-
there is a complaint about something from a neighbor that I can see from the street, or someone invites me onto their property to look at the neighbors,
Yeah.
whatever's going on in the backyard, other than that, I wouldn't know per se. If,
No.
You know, the next door neighbor never.
And
put
I
the ladder-
wouldn't want you to know that. What I'm saying is, when it's initially erected,
Mm-hmm.
and you go and check to make it's okay,
Yes,
knowing that these provisions, either the ladder can be taken away
Mm-hmm.
or locked in position, at least you know.
yes.
Yeah, it
That was
alleviates
part of it.
us, right? It's kind of like the warning in a product that you buy
Exactly,
that says
yes.
you should do this.
Yes.
And if you don't do it, that's your choice, but
That's
they warned
correct.
you. So,
It's just us as a township knowing that features that capability is there.
Right. I think the way it's worded now is stronger than what maybe Rich you're suggesting, because if you allow an exception, if you can swing it up and lock it, like you said, even the scenario that happened when you lived in your other house,
Yeah.
another child just swung
Yeah,
it back
true.
down and
True.
there you go.
true.
So,
So we're telling them they have to remove the ladder when they're not using it, when the pool is not in use. That could be on a weekend, though. It's,
Mr. Chairman, wouldn't this only apply to the granting of the permit for the fence? Or the above-ground pool? Zoning can only look at the permit app, and it doesn't have a fence. So it says above-ground pool. So if you don't have a fence, to ensure that the ladder is being removed, it's a provision of the permit, I presume. That's about all you can do. You can't monitor it after that.
True.
Exactly.
This is only for, I presume, I understand, is to issue a permit, that you're not
Yeah.
enclosing this
Of course.
with a fence.
and to that point, my last house, I had an in-ground pool, and the meter reader would come and he'd reach over and unlatch, and I had a special latch on. He'd unlatch it and he'd read the meter and he would leave, and he'd leave the gate wide open, and we didn't know. And so something similar in that case
Yeah.
too. We're telling them on an in-ground pool, you have to have it latched, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be left unlatched under unusual circumstances, so.
Because,
Well-
we do have something that says health, safety, and welfare of the community. Health, safety, and welfare of the community. So this would fall, to my opinion, under safety.
So do we want to leave it the way it is and just say the removing implies no access?
I would say so.
Okay,
I agree.
everyone good with that? Just leave it the way it is here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Any other discussion of any of the other changes? As you also noted when you got here tonight, we have a letter from Lake County Planning and Community Development kind of saying that they're okay with these text changes. They think they're good too. So. Okay. Well, if no other discussion on this, are we ready to vote on this?
Yeah.
Okay, Heather, if you want to call the roll on that one, or do we vote?
I
as
don't
a-
recall if we did a
We
motion.
need a motion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I'll make that motion,
Very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
to
Thank you.
recommend approval of text amendment to section 31.04B, construction and maintenance standards for a permanent pool above ground or in ground.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second on that motion?
I second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. It's the call for a vote for the affirmative to approve this, Heather?
Mr. Eiffelise?
Yes.
Mr. Ruppert?
Yes.
Mr. Lingenfelter?
Yes.
Mr. Schindler?
Yes.
And Mr. Peterson.
Yes. Okay. Wording has been approved. That's the end of our new business for tonight. Our old business to talk about tonight primarily is the work session to review the maximum attached garage sizes for dwellings in our residential districts. And last month, if you'll recall, we asked Heather to see what other people are doing in the northeastern corner of Ohio here. And she did a lot of nice homework and gave us 3 handouts here talking about what the other communities are doing. Everybody get a chance to take a look at those and see?
Yes.
Actually, we have 4 handouts if you count what she's got in this handout here. So, any comments on that? And what others are doing? As you can see, there's a wide variety here. And some communities consider the garage as an additional accessory to the house, and some consider the garage as part of the house. Some consider accessory buildings as being separate, and so there's kind of ran the spectrum here. One of the things that we were to look at too, if we got a chance, was the house on Stewart Drive. Did anybody go by and see that?
Yes.
I did also,
Yeah.
And what it seemed to me was that the shape of the lot over there had a lot to do with the concern of the next door neighbor, because the lot wasn't a traditional 2 rectangles side by side. The one on the corner was turned so that the garage, the accessory building, was really up close and right next to the driveway of the concerned resident. And unfortunately, I didn't think it was a bad looking building, but it had a large door on the left, I think for an RV or a camper, and made it look more utilitarian than just a garage.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was an ugly building by any stretch, but it just where it was located, I'm sure it met all the requirements, but it just so happened, had that lot been rectangular and that building set further back on the lot, I don't think it would have been an issue.
True.
But they came out their front door and looked at a big white wall or a gray wall or whatever it was. So,
Yeah.
so we have to deal with that situation too, is the different shapes of the lots and so forth, and the topography of the land there. And so, what thoughts do we have here?
Well, I believe that just setting a percentage based on the size of the house itself is probably the best way to go, especially when you run into a situation like that. When you see the lot, for example, you can make a big difference in how the thing looks and how it sits relative to other homes.
Right?
But if you have a percentage number and it stays to that number, my personal feel is, I think it would address those kind of issues if that happens to be something that's there.
Right.
You know?
And in that case, that was an accessory structure. And if we're talking garages, attached garages, which I believe is really our primary concern here, I kind of looked at one of the things that caught my eye, and I don't even know if the numbers are right, but Howland Township down in Trumbull County, they said attached accessory buildings shall not exceed 50% of the principal residential dwelling to which it's attached. Well, and they considered an attached garage as an accessory structure, but I thought, well, maybe some kind of ruling that said it can only be a certain percentage, not more than 50% of the size of the overall house. Now, in this case, they said whichever's greater, and they quoted 576 square feet. And I don't know how, if you have a 3-car garage, typically it's probably 30 by 20, 21. So you're over 600 square feet. And I think mine must be about that size, and it doesn't look out of proportion, but maybe that number is wrong, the 576, but if we said 50% of the principal residential dwelling, because like we talked last time, if you're in Wade Hill and you have an 8,000 square foot house and you want to have a 4 or 5 car garage, that garage still is not going to look large or out of proportion compared to the size of the house.
Right.
But you add a 4-car garage to a 1,200 square foot house, and you've got a bigger garage than you do a house. So, I think a ratio probably makes sense. I'm not sure what it should be, but I think a ratio would make sense. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
I don't think we should be involved in it at all.
The garage? Well,
I don't think it's anybody's business what you put on your property.
and many of the
Personally,
towns,
that's the way I feel about it. I think somebody says you don't need a building like that. What business is of yours to tell me what I need and what I don't need? Maybe I want a larger garage to store my stuff. If you don't like it, then I think you can put up some plantings, some landscape issues, and cover it. If it's within the guidelines of the zoning resolution, if it's within the guidelines of the setbacks and all the various issues that are required on a building within on a lot, what difference does it make? I don't think we should be legislating how big somebody's garage can be. I think that's petty, and I think that if you don't like it, then you should plant some shrubs and cover it, and you don't have to look at it.
well, to your point, our neighbors, Perry Township, Leroy, Painesville Township, they don't, for the
Right.
most part.
I don't think we should
Menor
be involved in
doesn't
that.
even regulate.
I don't want to get involved. I don't think we should be involved in dictate, because you say now you can have a 576 square foot accessory garage.
Right.
What if I need a 700-foot garage for my stuff? Maybe I've got an extra car. Maybe I want to put my riding tractor in there. I want to put my snow blower in there. I want to put other things in there, and I need bigger than a 576 foot isn't enough.
Well, that would be the accessory building. Then you would add, right?
Okay, and then we've got restrictions on that. Like I said, I don't think we should be involved in it. I think it's your property. You pay the taxes. You own the property. You should be able to put on it as long as it's within the code and within the resolution, and as long as it adheres to the setbacks and getting side yard clearances and things of that nature. You should be able to put anything on your property you want. Period. And if your neighbors don't like it, you know what? Then plant some plantings and cover it, or put your house up for sale and move. But I mean, for you to dictate, for me to come in and move in and say, I don't like what you have over there, I don't think you should be able to have that. Yeah, I just think that's a slippery slope. I think we go too far down the rabbit hole with that and starting to allow people, neighbors and whatnot, to dictate what the other neighbors can have. I don't think that's a good direction to go.
Well, if you have your typical Concord half-acre lot, which is probably the most common lot size we have, you can only put so much on anyway because of the setbacks, right? So you can't put a 10-car garage on because you have no place to put it. So that plays into what you're saying.
Well, that new house on 84, is that in Concord Township? The one that's,
Oh, in Menor. That's Menor Concord.
Is that Menor?
That's Menor Concord, yes.
No,
I know which one
it's
you're
the
talking
white one, the
the white
huge
one with the 4-car
the
garage?
Georgie
Two
property,
garages,
that's
right there on
Concord.
either end.
Yeah,
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
that's Concord,
Yeah, that's Concord
Is
Menor.
that Concord Township?
yeah.
That's an awful big house on that lot.
Yeah, it's not really a really big lot either, is it?
Yeah, no. What is that, Frank? That's over by you.
Yeah, I've
Half acre?
yeah, it's half acre.
It's probably bigger, being that it fronts on Johnny Cake.
Well,
Prior to
minimum-
that being there, I had
The
an old,
minimum is half acre. My house, for example, my lot is almost 3/4 of an acre.
oh, is it?
Just the way it was, we bought the lot
Yeah.
because we had more woods and stuff in the back, and it was shaped like a pie. So I benefited from it. But because even though a minimum,
That one has a 4-car garage? Is it 4?
I thought it was 2 here, and then the house, and then around the corner, it's L-shaped, and on the
Yeah.
other corner is another 2.
But they're all attached.
The whole thing is attached,
The whole
correct?
thing is
So
attached.
you got two-car garages, one on either end.
2-car.
yeah,
There's another house like that over here off of Ravenna Road in the neighborhood, just south, or just north of I-90. There's a house there, it's got a 2-car here, and then the house, and a 2-car over here.
So is that, I mean, it's a nice looking house. It's got a 4-car garage. And that's,
Obviously meets the setbacks.
yeah. So I'm not sure if you could fit another car garage in there or not, but I'd love to have a 4-car garage.
Yes,
Myself.
I'd rather have 6, but
Yeah,
personally.
well,
Well, and 2, it's really simple to say, like Andy says, we have setbacks, and it's not our business to tell them. If you decide to tell them, you look at this sheet from Willoughby and look how complex that is to try and enforce, you know, all the rules and regulations associated with it. Kind of is a rabbit hole.
Well, a lot of people feel that, you know, you're moving into a residential area with nice homes, and then when you have these buildings that become pretty good size and obese, it doesn't look like it's a nice, boils down more to aesthetics than anything else.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
then if you have so many, allowed so many big units like that, where people over time, they start storing, not now their stuff, but then they start putting everything you can think of, motorcycles and everything else, you know, rough terrain vehicles, if they can fit it in there, then it starts to become a point where it becomes like an annoying kind of thing, you know? And that's what they're trying to minimize too. I mean, you're not trying to restrict somebody, but then again, you're trying to have like, a lot of my neighbors come down the street and they always say, boy, Frank, it's like a bedroom street you have. It's so quiet and so nice and so rustic looking, you know?
Because your development was kind of put together all at the same time, but we have
It
a lot
was.
of neighborhoods in Concord that are older neighborhoods
I know.
that
Yeah.
you have the houses built in the 50s and 60s
Right.
that are small ranches, and next door you've got the houses built
Right.
now that are huge.
Pretty good size, yeah.
They're all kind of mixed up, you
Yeah.
know, and you run into that.
I agree with Andy with respect to the attached garages. I thought part of the issue here was the detached garages. The one on, what street is it?
Stuart.
Stewart.
Well, that kind of got, I think, the ball rolling. But,
Yeah.
But, you know, looking at our agenda, it's attached garages is what we're discussing. You want to discuss accessory buildings too on this, Heather?
Well,
Or
my
separate-
suggestion to the board would have been, if you were going to consider regulating the size of the attached garage, that maybe at that time, just be aware of what we do allow as far as detached accessory buildings.
Right.
That way, you have all the information in front of you, you know, so you can understand if you were gonna limit attached garages, what could they do in lieu of that as a detached, or just consider that when making.
Well, I think Andy makes a good point. If we have an attached garage and it meets all the setbacks, maybe you can only get a 3-car and you really want 5, you can always add an accessory building for 2 more. I've done that myself. So maybe we don't have to regulate actual attached garage sizes because the setbacks kind of do that for us and the lot size does that for us.
Mr. Chairman, that's kind of what I voiced last month about that point, but it brought to my attention, just for clarification, and maybe Heather can help or anybody, in our definition, when I am trying to discern this to Heather's point, yeah, we're looking at attached garages, but be aware of what the regulations say for detached. In the definition of a garage, it's a detached accessory building is a garage.
Can be.
Or a portion of the principal building to store vehicles, or a portion of the principal building. Presumably, that's an attached garage, right? Right.
Or
So, private garage is a detached accessory building, and then there's a definition for an accessory building that we also have in the same lot, and that is restricted in size for each district
Correct.
as an accessory building. It's restricted to maximum square footage. There's also a detached building definition. That's where I was a little confused. It's a very old one. It's 1978 that sits here. Here we have an accessory building, we have a principal building, and we have a detached building.
Right.
What?
That could be a I have a 10 by 16 detached building that I couldn't put a car in, but it's my lawn equipment, things like that.
But isn't that an accessory building?
Yes, it is.
Oh, so what's a detached building?
I thought that's what it was, but one and the same, I guess. But
Okay, so they're one and the same, even though there's two
I think
definitions.
so. No, but you can also have a accessory building. I had one that had garage doors on it and a concrete floor, and I put cars in there.
Yeah, yeah. So there isn't anything in here that kind of changed my mind. Not as strongly opinionated as Andy voiced here, but I would agree that it was that to restrict it's more of the guidelines for building on an R1 and R4. I mean, it's just you're limited, and you should be able to.
And you're further limited by HOAs.
That's the other thing
That's
I
the
was
other
going to say.
thing,
Now,
right.
I'm in Summerwood. We have a little over a half acre lot, and I have a 3-car side load garage, and I have an accessory building. I have a storage barn, which was limited in the deed restrictions how big that could be.
Mine too.
Right now, the way the deed restrictions are, if I wanted to build a smokehouse, just a little house, little building to smoke meat in,
A detached building.
Yeah, just a little building. I can't do it. I'm not allowed.
Right.
Can't do it.
By the HOA?
By the restrictions, I have one accessory building, and it falls within the guideline. And I built the maximum size that I was allowed within the. You could build something smaller, obviously, but I built it. You were allowed at whatever it was at that 20 by 16 or whatever the size was. That's the size storage barn that I built, and that's it. And I can't put anything else on my property as far as an accessory building or any other structures outside of what's already there. Now if I wanted a bigger attached garage, I could have pushed out the garage and put a 4-car garage instead of a 3-car. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, you're already limited by the deed restrictions. And I think that people, at what point does it become incumbent on the owners of a home and the potential homeowner to do the research and understand what exactly is going on and what's allowed and what's not allowed before you just move in and then start complaining about things that are going on. It's like, why don't you read and understand what you're doing before you move in? And then you move in, you buy a house, you make a big investment, you buy a house, and then you want to move in and you want to start talking about what other people are doing on their property. It's none of your business, period. It's their business.
Now,
Mr. Chairman.
is that a deed restriction or an HOA?
It's a deed restriction. It's in the deed restrictions.
Okay, deed restrictions are only applicable to the original owner.
Right.
No,
That's not true.
no, rides with the parcel.
How are they
No.
carried from one owner to the next owner?
It's recorded on the parcel. It's a record. Mine is. It's a record.
Deed restrictions run with the land.
Run with the land.
That's the basic concept.
Concept, not a fact.
When it's up to the HOA to enforce those deed restrictions.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah,
And
true.
if the HOA is not good at that,
Knightsbridge does not have an HOA. We do have deed restrictions for the original owner because the lot can be bought and bought and bought. The
Right.
third owner has no idea about the deed restrictions that were applied on the first owner of the land. No idea what's going on.
Well, and whose responsibility is it to ensure that the owner, the new homeowner, you move into a development, the original builder, all the people that originally move in, they build, obviously everything is transitional, people move out, people move in. Now the new owner moves in to a house that's got deed restrictions on it. Whose responsibility is it to make the new homeowner aware that there are deed restrictions?
The title company.
Yeah, title company and the realtor who's selling the house.
Well, realtors, yeah.
Well, I
it's
know,
the title
but-
company.
Right, but I mean, they should, if they're doing their due diligence, they should be
It's
letting
part
them.
of this, part of the transaction.
And who enforces it?
The title company only can provide the restriction as noted that's on the property
And a
when
lot
you
of times
purchase
you
it.
have an HOA that goes defunct and
I know.
nobody to enforce it.
Ours went to fund.
Well, okay, that's another point.
If I can go back
went
to,
off on a tangent.
yeah, it's,
Sorry.
yeah, that's okay. If I can go back, Mr. Chairman, what thing that maybe Heather can speak to this, what I noted in the notes here in the second paragraph would be of concern. It's indicated that for lots less than 1 acre in size, there have been many variances approved by the BZA to allow more than one detached accessory building on a lot. Now, I know that's not the subject of attached garage. That concerns me. And so, and that's because up to the maximum square footage, they have the ability to keep adding buildings. Is that how I read that? There's more than one detached on lots less than an acre. Is that correct?
So if you're less than an acre, you're limited to only one, or less than 2 acres rather. If you're less than 2 acres in size, you're only allowed to have one detached accessory building. There have been many residents that have gone in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals for various reasons, requesting a variance to allow them to have a second detached accessory building.
Okay.
Some of the situations are, it could have been an older home and their one detached accessory building was their garage. And they wanted to put up a small shed. But based on the zoning resolution, they were not allowed to do that.
I see. Okay.
Or other times it's just, well, we already have one and we want another one. You know?
Did they exceed the square footage in the code?
They didn't necessarily exceed the 1,024 square feet, which is the maximum permitted. But I know the board at times had looked at, okay, well, you're in front of us, you're asking for a variance to have 2 buildings. And some of the things that they considered was, well, what size is the one building you already have versus what size is the building you want to add? And then they're doing this math game, you know, figuring it out. And, oh, okay, well, you're at 1,000 square feet between the 2 buildings. And, you know, they've justified variances under that kind of scenario.
And we talked about, maybe 3-4 years ago, we talked about changing the zoning regulations that said if you're under that 1,024 square feet, you could have no more than 2, but you could have 2 that wouldn't exceed 1024.
Yeah.
So he could put his smokehouse in and
Oh.
he could. Or you could do it now, but you gotta go to the BZA.
And deal with his HOA.
Yeah,
So he's
and
got
with your HOA.
double whammy. But just bringing that up to, like, I've noticed a lot of the larger lots that are not in developments, the 2 acre lots, seeing more and more people building larger buildings, which the maximum size in our R1 and R4 districts for lots greater than 2 acres is 1,532 square feet.
Right.
And there's no limit on the number of buildings you're allowed to have of that certain size, which I don't think at this point anyone has really taken advantage of. There was a house off of Girdled that had multiple buildings of that size, and then they wanted another one, like 2,400 square feet, went in front of the BZA, and the BZA approved it. And it's like, and their argument in those scenarios is that the applicant will come up to the BZA and say, well, look, I can build 2 1,500 square foot buildings, but if you allow me to build this 3,000 square foot building, it's going to look much nicer, and it's going to save me money, and you know, there's conversation like that, and then that ends up getting approved. But where my concern comes in is, what are people using those buildings for? And that's where the zoning, you know, complaints start happening. Everybody thinks they're a landscaper. Everyone, you know, gets a trailer and a landscape, you know, or a construction business, or a power wash business, and they're having their employees come and they're hidden in the woods. Yet the zoning inspector can't visualize it, but everyone knows that it's happening back there. I don't know. I mean, having a large building doesn't necessarily allow that to happen, but it doesn't hurt it. I mean, it makes it much easier. So I know, and that's getting a little bit off of what we were talking about.
No, I'm only expressing a concern observation that multiple accessory buildings on a half-acre lot would bother me.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
It would
appears to
bother me
what
too.
they're giving variances for additional detached buildings on lots less than an acre. R1 in an R1 or R4.
Like I said, most of those scenarios where they already had like a detached garage and they wanted to put up a small like shed or something like that. But the other thing to consider is too, we don't even have any like distance requirements between those structures. So from like a safety standpoint, there probably should be some distance requirements, you know, from an accessory building in the house and things like that. We don't have anything in there currently. A lot of communities do have things like that, and I don't know if the building codes also have setbacks that maybe the building inspectors enforce. I haven't looked into that, but I think that's something that you could reasonably regulate that wouldn't prohibit property owners from using the property they want to, but put some basic maybe separation requirements between those structures in case there was an event that you might be able to save the other building or something.
Well, I would presume that falls under building safety and fire. I mean, there's a fire code. There's got to be an inherent.
Yeah.
They can't. Okay.
I don't know. That's like the building department. I mean, like I had somebody over in Althea. They're putting up a carport like 6 inches away from their shed, and I couldn't tell them no because everything met zoning as far as the carport location, size, setbacks, and everything like that. So.
It's really interesting that all these different communities have a different take on it.
They sure
but
do.
the one common theme that seems to be here, at least 5 in a row, is they do not regulate maximum attached garage sizes.
Correct.
That's Painesville Township, Menor, Leroy, Perry, Madison, and Olmsted Township, and Kirtland Hills. They limit accessory buildings, but not attached garages.
Yep.
Which
I think is our consensus here on attached
I
garages.
don't-
It's just this
I
multiple
don't
accessory
think we ought to
buildings.
touch attached garages.
Maybe it's a
I
subject
think
for.
Andy made a strong case for that. I agree.
You think? Sorry.
How did you really feel about it? So, are we in agreement that at this point in time, we're not going to try to regulate attached garage sizes? Are
Yeah.
we, as a board, in agreement with that,
That works for me.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, probably so.
Okay, very good. Then, I guess that resolves that for now. We did have a work session for the PUDs and residential conservation district. You had some word on that, it's still tabled, I know, but you had some feedback, correct?
I did meet with Mike Lucas. Unfortunately, he was going on vacation right after we met. He wanted to look into a couple things from a legal standpoint regarding the final development plan review, the changes that we're considering regarding that. And I also asked him just to look at some of the other things that we had in there too from a legal standpoint. And I know he just got back from vacation. He was trying to have something for tonight's meeting, but I just don't have it yet.
So that remains tabled for now?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for tonight? Any word on our car wash and our ice cream parlor? I keep waiting.
Well, I got an oops notification that they're going to start clearing the land, and I know they got everything approved, so
Okay.
I think they're going to start soon.
I
don't
drove
know.
by today and the sign's starting to decay at some
I
point.
know.
Yeah, somebody
I don't know,
hit the
yeah.
sign, I think.
Oh,
So, and I haven't reached out to the ownership to see,
I was
who's actually
telling
gonna
Heather
start.
earlier, the detached garage that was on, what's the street again?
Stewart.
Stewart Drive.
It now has lights, a rope light around the garage doors,
Oh.
and they're changing colors, and it traces all over the place. It's very obnoxious, in my opinion.
Sometimes you have to be careful about alienating your neighbors, because then you start with that process and then the neighbors become retaliatory, and that's when the other side of the fence gets painted hot pink with purple polka dots, and they don't have to look at it, but you have to look at it, okay? And that's and so therein lies the issue of, you know what, there's nothing wrong with engaging your neighbors. Have a civil conversation, have a discussion, come to a reasonable conclusion, and then everything's fine. But when you start to try to dictate how other people live, then you can that pendulum can swing in a bad direction, and unfortunately it can get ugly. So I bet if there wouldn't have been an issue made about it, those probably the LED lights that are tracing around the doors probably wouldn't be there. But somebody figured, hey, here's a little jab.
I don't know.
You know, but I think it's important that people have to, you know, it's nice to talk and have conversations, and you know, like I said, maybe you go to the person, you say, hey, look, you know, this, I wasn't really expecting this. Is there a way we can, you know, are you planning on putting up some landscape? Hey, I'll tell you what, I'll go in halfers with you. We'll put some nice, you know, pine trees here, and we'll cover that up so we don't, you know, that type of thing. That's how reasonable people come to reasonable conclusions instead of trying to dictate and cause problems, and then it backfires and creates animosity. And I think there's an old saying, you can't, what is it, you can't pick your family members, and you can't pick your neighbors. So it's kind of those kind of things where it's better to coexist and in harmony than it is to create animosity. So, you know, but I understand.
Okay.
People are people. People are going to do things, and it's going to create problems, but
All right, well, with that, our next meeting is September 5th, 2023.
boy,
and
September, that's fall.
it's fall, almost.
Jeez.
So we will adjourn tonight's meeting.
So
Thank you, everyone.
are you harvesting as much?